It is my nerd world, and welcome to it, Depeche Mode, the podcast. And I have some really exciting news to share with you if you have not already heard. It is my nerd world, Depeche Mode, the show, and I'm your host, Jon Justice. Now, I've had some thoughts about recording a new episode since the last episode 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, on the last show, I talked a bit about the future of Depeche Mode, potential for a new album, and I gave sort of my rationale and theory as to why I very much believe that Martin and Dave would get back together to record something in the wake of Fletch's passing. Since then, I've had some rather interesting things happen in my life that was prompting me to record another episode, specifically to talk about the album Spirit. And I kind of had just been knocking the idea around, but hadn't sat down at all and worked out any notes. And just about a half hour ago, I happened to pop over to Depeche-Mode.com and the Halo Forum, one of the best places on the internet. If you're ever looking looking for a message board or a forum about Depeche Mode, Depeche-Mode.com, and that Halo board has always been my favorite go-to. And they've had a thread that's been going on for, I don't know, over years now, talking about the potential of a new album, and there has been no new information that was until today. Now, if you sense a bit of sort of a bittersweet tone in my voice, it's for a very specific reason that I'll share with you here in just a moment, because I'm sure that for you listening, this is going to be very personal, and for me, on a number of very specific levels, it's very personal. However, today, the Depeche Mode Facebook account, official Depeche Mode Facebook account, and the official Instagram account posted a photo that I used for the cover of this particular episode of Martin Gore and Dave Gahan, and what appears to be, I'm going to assume it's Martin Gore's studio in Santa Barbara. I could be wrong. I'm basing this solely off of the foliage in the background and the fact that it looks like they're in a house. But they're surrounded by musical gear, and it looks as if Martin is actually leaning down, either pointing at song lyrics on top of a keyboard while Dave is standing next to him, looking at whatever Martin is looking at. And it actually looks like there's a piece of paper on the keyboard itself. But the caption to the posting says, "Finding stability in what we know and love, and focusing on what gives life meaning and purpose." Now, what does this mean in terms of the future, a new album? Obviously, we know nothing beyond the photo, but it's the first piece of evidence that we've seen of Martin and Dave working together on potentially new material. And I think we can all just hope that we receive something. At this point, an EP, even a single, I would be thrilled with. If I were a betting man, I would say it would be a new album. And for the reasons that I laid out on previous episodes, that I think this is what Andrew Fletcher would have wanted. We know that Martin Gore and Dave Gahan had both been working on writing quite a bit over the course of the past few years. The pandemic obviously put that all on hold. But ever since we got word of Andrew Fletcher's passing, I always felt that the band wasn't over yet, and they would at least do one more project together. And today, we appear to have gotten the first piece of evidence of this. From a personal level, for me, it's a bit bittersweet. And I've talked about this on previous episodes, but I'll just kind of give the backstory again briefly. First and foremost, we lost Andrew Fletcher. We know that it was a aortic dissection that caused his death. That took place a mere weeks before I went in for my own third open heart surgery to replace a hole in my graft that was put in place because of an aneurysm that I had back in 2009, that if I had not gotten it taken care of, would have ruptured, which would have been aortic dissection. It was obviously tragic for all of us that we lost Andrew Fletcher. And then just a few weeks later, while recovering in the hospital from my open heart surgery, my best friend and the person that hosted the show with me that I do, Drew Lee, passed away from a cardiac event, which obviously, struck me tremendously. Now, this rolls into the topic that I was going to do for an episode, and that is I had to move on. I miss my friend dearly, but there's a job to do. And I've taken over hosting duties of the show that we used to do together, and it will probably remain that way for the foreseeable future. It's something that I'm very accustomed to. I hosted my own show for almost 10 years in Tucson, Arizona, before coming up here to work with my best friend. And Drew was pretty much the only person who I ever wanted to go and co-host a show with. So to see my favorite band, a band that I've loved since I was a kid, a band that I was a fan of with regard to a musical artist before I was a fan of anybody else, seeing these two individuals, having they themselves suffered a tremendous loss in the wake of the passing of their friend and bandmate, and I would dare say, they were as close as family, and seeing the words finding stability in what we know and love and focusing on what gives life meaning and purpose. And that's exactly what I've been doing. So it means a lot to see this band that that I love so much pressing on in the wake of adversity, and sort of, it's reassuring, considering that I've had to do the same thing in my life as well. And it's I don't know, it just speaks to how much a part of Depeche Mode has been, how much a part Depeche Mode has been in my life as I fumble my words, and how, once again, I find myself relating to this band even beyond the lyrical content of their music. And this brings me to what I was going to record in the first place before we got this awesome news and this incredible photo of the two of these individuals, of Martin and Dave, allegedly working on new music. Spirit was not and is not my favorite Depeche Mode album by any stretch of the imagination. When it came out, I found it a little off-putting with the amount of political content that was in it. At the time, I just couldn't quite relate to it, despite the fact that I host a news talk show. However, in the wake of the passing of my friend and having to take over the hosting duties of the show, and now being the sole creative force behind the show, I find Spirit now to be a lot more relatable to the times that we are dealing with right now. And it speaks to the writing of Martin Gore, and to a lesser extent Dave, but really it speaks to just what Depeche Mode has created throughout the years. Enduring, meaningful, beautiful music that can change over time. I've had so many songs by the band mean different things to me throughout moments of my life, and suddenly now, in the wake of having to take on this new role that I haven't done in 6 years, and dealing with a tremendous loss in my life of my best friend, this album that I really had no connection to whatsoever, apart from a handful of songs. I love Cover Me. I've loved that track since the album came out. And Poison Heart, I think, is up there with some of the best Depeche Mode songs ever done. That being said, I had zero connection to this album, and now, top to bottom, I enjoy it thoroughly based off of where I am in my life and how I can relate to what the record says. And that's a beautiful thing. Art is subjective. Music, movies, it's all the same, right? All of art is subjective to the individual who's consuming it. And what Depeche Mode creates is incredibly powerful and enduring. Listening to Spirit now, I kind of laugh because this was an album that I could take or leave, 3 months ago, and now I'll put it up there with some of my favorites. Still doesn't match what I think is the trinity, right, that I've mentioned so many times on the show: your music for the masses, your Violator, your songs of faith and devotion. You can shuffle those around, kind of move them back and forth. And again, it's subjective. I know other people have other favorite albums, but Spirit has now become one of my favorite post-Allen albums that they've done based off of the circumstances in my life, and it speaks to me now in a way that I never imagined that it could have. And seeing this news of Martin and Dave working on new material and the official account tweeting it out just brings a lot of joy to my heart. Makes me miss my friend. It makes me, my heart breaks for Dave and Martin, but I'm glad that they are moving forward and doing what they love. I can relate to that as I'm doing the same thing, and it just has me really, really excited. And I couldn't wait to come and sit down and share this with you on the show for just a few minutes. And I don't know. I'm excited for the future now, and what the band will put together. I mentioned on last week's show that sometimes through the most difficult times comes the best work. If you've followed any of the making of Depeche Mode records, you know that Songs of Faith and Devotion was one of the most difficult times for the band and one of the most difficult times making a record, as was to a certain extent Ultra. Ultra was sort of Dave coming out of it and the difficulty of him coming out of his addiction while he was headlong right in the middle of it. And when Daniel Miller showed up at the villa that they were using to record, and he sensed no energy or vibe whatsoever, and Flood has even made comments about how, they were all sort of going their separate ways. And Alan Wilder on one of the documentaries, had said that through all that, adversity, in his mind, they created one of the best albums that they'd ever made. So you can't help but speculate that the passing of Andrew Fletcher, their dear friend and founding member in the band, perhaps will inspire them to create something truly special. And even if that isn't the case, it's still going to be something truly special, just based off of the nature of what the band has gone through. So that's all that I have to share with you this week. Again, completely impromptu, took no notes. I saw the posting up on the Halo board, and immediately, the post was go to Instagram, and I went to Instagram and saw the photo, and it brought tears to my eyes. So exciting to hear. When will it come out? Who knows? People are already speculating on the board sometime next year. I think a lot of that depends on, what it is they're planning on creating. We know that sometimes the band has sat down just to perhaps record an EP, and they end up making a whole album. That happened with Ultra. So we'll see what happens. But I will certainly keep you updated right here on this podcast. And I just thank you so much for listening to me talk about this for 15 minutes. I hope you're as excited as I am, and I look forward to hearing from you. If you want to email talkshownerd@gmail.com, or you can leave a comment up on YouTube if you happen to be listening to the show there. And whenever news breaks, I'll be sure to pop back on and let you know all about it. So I hope you subscribe to my Nerd World and my YouTube channel or the podcast channel, so you never miss a My Nerd World podcast. So thank you again so much for checking the show out. I'll be back again real soon. I'm kind of doing these impromptu. I'm not sticking to a schedule. It's when the mood strikes, and certainly the mood struck today. Thank you so much for listening to the show. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.